My name is Abril and my topic today is on racial profiling. My main proposition is that racial profiling continues in the Black community. Racial profiling and the use of race and ethnicity as grounds for suspecting of someone of having committed an offense. An act of profiling differs from criminal aspect where law enforcement agencies use behavioral elements to predict crime. In the criminal sense, police use profiling and their experiences and traditions to discover criminals in society. Racial profiling rests on the same correlation with the criminal classification. However, law authorities use race rather than traits as indicators of criminal activity. My first point is that racial profiling dehumanizes minorities, and that goes into how media profits from racial profiling in the sense that when cases like the Trayvon Martin case and the Michael Brown were very showcased on TV, and social platforms benefited a lot, but often cases aren't actually shown on social media, and those are the cases that a lot of people don't know about, and in that sense that's why they aren't shown. And big cases cause people to get more not exactly involved, but cause more controversy when it comes to racial profiling. And again with profits, so recently the movie Get Out came out, and that has a lot to do with that as well. And I don't know a lot of you have watched the movie, but it had a lot to do at the end scene where Rose is on the floor and a police officer pulls up just the car, and a lot of people, even myself when I was watching it, I felt oh no, they're gonna believe that the guy, I can't remember his name, but since he was he's Black and African American, I was oh no, they're gonna think that it was him that caused all of that, all that, what am I looking for? All that bad stuff, all the blood, but it was actually his friend. And then that made me realize even I felt that, and I wasn't even going into the movie exactly expecting that. And another point when it comes to dehumanizing minorities, it also diminishes a sense of citizenship. And what I mean by that is a lot of officers, and there's a lot of cases of such, but they stop certain races of color and during traffic or in the street, and they basically make them feel why would they pick them out of everyone on just because it's based on the color, and they just basically make them feel they're not part of society because just because of the color of their skin, I get picked out of a lot of places. And in a report in the Leadership Conference on Citizenship Evidence of Widespread Racial Profiling shows that African Americans and Hispanic are disproportionately likely to be stopped and searched by police, even though they're likely to be found possessing contraband and committing a criminal act. In Illinois, for example, Black and Hispanic drivers were twice as likely to be searched after a traffic stop compared to white drivers, but white drivers were twice as likely to have contraband. The NYPD controversial stop and frisk program shows similar evidence of racial profiling, with police targeting Black and Latinos about 85% of the time. In nearly 9 out of 10 searches, police find nothing. And another point, going back to dehumanizing minorities, it also causes minorities to act differently. When you're out on the street and you see a police officer, and I even by myself, I didn't do anything, but I just act different, oh, I've got to act right. But what if I'm already acting right, but I just feel I have to act another way in order not to be questioned or feel out of place. And my second point is that racial profiling has effect on the youth. And what I was going for with that is that it has effect on psychological self-esteem. And I found an article by criminologist Scott Worsley that said that to argue that racial profiling is harmless, that it only hurts those who break the law, is to totally ignore the psychological and social damage that can result from always being considered one of the usual suspects. and also that the American Psychological Association notes that research psychologists have studied that the effects of racial profiling found that victim effects of racial profiling include post-traumatic stress and disorder and other forms of stress-related disorders and perceptions of race-related threats and failure to use available community resources. It also affects like the education of young children that are part of minorities because they already feel like they won't make it, and they already feel like if they were to get in school get an argument with a person that's white, like they would automatically like be at fault, or that they just won't make it because they feel like the system is not made for them in that sense. Like they don't put as much effort in school because they don't get that much attention and already feel like they won't make it. And my third point is that the racial profiling causes minorities to distrust in the system. And one of the points that I wanted to make on that was that, again, police officers selectively focus on one's race. And in a study by Professor Davis in the University of California found that evidence of significant bias in the killing of unarmed black Americans relative to unarmed white Americans, and that probability of being black, unarmed, and shot by police is about 3.5 times the probability of being white, unarmed, and shot by the police on average. Additionally, the analysis found that there is no relationship between county-wide racial bias in police shooting and crime rates, meaning that the racial bias observed in the police shooting in this data is not exactly explainable as a result to like the local level criminal rates. And also another part on not being able to trust the system is that there's like physically like marked when you're being searched by like the police officers, for example, like being strip searched. And a controversial workshop found by Harvard professor Roland Fryer Jr. found that police officers are more likely to use their hand and push a subject into a wall and use handcuffs, draw weapons, push a subject on the ground, point their weapons, and use pepper spray or a baton when interacting with blacks. And another article that I found interesting that was related to my point on police officers creating like the minorities not to trust in the system is that a 2014 analysis of Illinois Department of Transportation data by the American Civil Liberties Union found the following. African American and Latino drivers are nearly twice as likely as white drivers to be asked during a routine traffic stop for consent to have their car searched, yet white motorists are 49% more likely than African American motorists to have contraband discovered during a consent search by law enforcement. And then this goes to show that racial profiling exists continuously in the black community, and yeah, that's my point.
All right, well, the proposition's identified, and I think that's it's actually pretty clear. The contents are not previewed, and the idea that this is going on, I think, is kind of taken as a presupposition at the beginning of the speech. I actually think the material that you had at the last part of the speech would make more sense at the beginning, demonstrating that in fact racial profiling continues to be widely practiced, and then follow up with what the negative consequences of that profiling would be. You kind of work at it in a backwards way, suggesting that there are these particular problems that occur, and then at the end you're talking about how profiling continues to exist, and I just felt a little bit backwards. Early on there's kind of a sidetrack issue about the media that I don't think gets you anywhere. It's a little bit distracting. The fictional example of Get Out, I think maybe that you could have used that as an attention device, but as proof on your point, it doesn't really make much sense. The notion that profiling exists and therefore it is dehumanizing and then it creates problems, I think that's a more logical sequence for your supporting arguments. I think the evidence actually got better as you went along. There's a lot of presuppositions and assertions in the first part of the speech. In the last part of the speech, there's a lot more citation of it material, and there's some statistical information that supports those points. I think there's a tendency to just present information and ideas without kind of building an argument. I didn't, like I said, I think your secondary points got clearer as you were speaking, but they because they are developing in a way that it seems to be somewhat random, you're not getting as much out of the material that you have in your argument as you would otherwise. You do go over time for almost 2.5 minutes and you finish off with yeah, that's about it. Not necessarily inspiring confidence in your credibility on that point. So that's a little bit problematic. You want to work on that. All right. Thank you.